She is likable, important,
completely
serious.
unpretentious, very articulate,
The image of
funny.
a revolutionary.
By November, I'll be ready to take on the whole world at once.
She's a powerful force in Massachusetts.
Sophisticated communicator, same way that Reagan
as
is.
the governor of the Commonwealth. I have never liked the idea of anybody being able to tell me what to do.
Barbara had the right issue at the right time.
Simple answer.
She was a
that
nobody
2.5 was.
and a nothing. She showed them, didn't she? It is all our money. I never found anybody that I think was more right than Henry David Thoreau. He would tell everyone to follow your drummer no matter where it leads.
This is the year Barbara Anderson graduated. No more the leader of just the most important tax revolt around here since the Boston Tea Party. In addition now, as the Republican Party fades out of sight in the democratic politics of Massachusetts, she's the opposition. She personifies the citizen movement of Massachusetts in the 80s, the cool militancy of the voting booth that somehow outlasted the hot participation politics of protest in the 60s and 70s. This is the pocketbook populism of Citizens for Limited Taxation, CLT, that made a rich marriage with business corporations that wanted their taxes cut too. Together they have brought the sometimes blunt instrument of referendum politics, plebiscite government, into the once insulated chambers that decide the getting and spending of state money. Tonight you'll see Barbara Anderson on her way to her latest victory with question 3. We're looking at a leader with a paradoxical phobia about leadership, including her own. But I think you'll also see a more striking coherence in this character, in this story, of one citizen's fight over purse strings and over respect. Barbara Anderson travels light, usually solo. Everywhere she goes this fall, in this case to see North Shore mayors and selectmen at the Marblehead Town Hall, she delivers good humor with an edge of resentment.
I'm going to do what men usually do when they start a presentation, which is tell a story about a business lobbyist, someone who's still a business lobbyist, who was a business lobbyist during the Sargent administration. And the lobbyist was very exact. This is a true story. The lobbyist was very exact. He said, well, if you're not going to stop your spending, and if you're not going to raise taxes, what are you going to do? And Sargent said, I guess I'll just have to screw the cities and towns. Somehow Beacon Hill has the impression that it's their money, which they're nice enough to share with us if we go in and ask them really nicely, preferably on our knees for it. Every year having to go into coax for money, which really belongs to the taxpayers in our cities and towns in the first place. So what we're doing is trying to make some inroads into the power and the contempt that they feel for us, and when that changes, then maybe we have a chance toward fairness.
In shifting battles, the constant theme is that politicians and government cannot be trusted to act for the people.
We treat them with all kinds of reverence, and they get out and they do outrageous things, and they take our money, and we go in and beg them to please be nicer to us, and then they have total contempt for us. We in turn start to have contempt for them and lose our sense of awe. We just don't vote anymore, don't want anything to do with politicians, and then of course the whole system collapses eventually.
In 1980, on Barbara Anderson's cue, the people acted for themselves, slapping a 2.5% limit on local property taxes that had been very nearly the highest in the country.
I clearly remembered sitting on my front porch in Danvers getting the latest notice of the property tax increase and just sitting there in tears knowing that there went the monthly movie, you know, there went, because we had put all our money in the house, we were trying to fix it up, Andy was working all these hours, and we were just, newly married, and it really hurt. It really hurt to pay the property taxes, and nobody cared. And there were people opening those tax bills and sitting down and crying because they knew they were going to keep losing ground and never getting ahead, and it was going to get worse, and they had no control over it, and the politicians, and this is the important point, the politicians were laughing at them and taking advantage of them and treating them with utter contempt and not delivering services. They weren't getting the best education for their kids. The MBTA was a national disgrace. The roads weren't that great. And what were they getting for their money?
Want to know what Proposition 2.5 means to the elderly? It means they can keep their homes and know that their property taxes can go down. Vote yes on question 2 and no on question 3.
I was scared. I was frightfully scared. CLT would come and tell all the reasons why they felt that 2.5 was going to be good for Massachusetts. And we had people in the audience that were made up of policemen and school teachers and recreation leaders and human service agencies, all saying, what do you mean it's going to be good? We have a mayor here that's going to have to close schools, lay off people. We tried to show people the other side of this, the simple-minded solution that 2.5 was, which is that without the property tax revenue under the
the peculiar legal structure in Massachusetts, there was no other way for cities and towns to get the funds to support local services.
Barbara came in and said, no, these are not, taxes are too high, government is too big, and let's cut it.
What the vote on 2.5 was just, we've had it, don't push us around anymore.
And that is the message that carried the day ultimately by a 59 to 41% margin.
They took a chance with the lives of an awful lot of individuals in this state.
2.5 forced communities to find ways of doing more with less.
Prop 2.5 is history now, hotly contested history.
We didn't slice off small bits of fat, as Barbara used to talk about, fat in the local budget. We hacked away at bones.
I closed 6 elementary schools since 2.5. I have my 3 junior high schools closed right now.
Many communities still have not recovered from cuts in police, fire, education, parks.
2.5 would not have worked without the legislature coming through and helping it work. I don't think that it's a great step forward to have the state telling the cities and towns how they should spend their money. That really diminishes the whole idea of local control of the individual in government.
If CLT were really a populist group, and if it really had populist ideals, it would be extremely unhappy with the results of 2.5, which are reduce the involvement of citizens in the operation of local government.
By winning a big one, the people felt better about the state and were more willing to cooperate in making it a better place.
Doing complicated issues like public finance on the ballot, where you have only a yes or no choice, is in principle a reckless way to go.
Barbara Anderson's rather carefree version is, when your convictions are solid, you can take chances.
I had no idea what I was getting into. It came as a total surprise to me.
I think Barbara, to some extent, oversimplifies. Some people have called her reckless.
I just keep expecting everyone to cooperate as long as I've got this reasonable, friendly sort of a proposition here. Why don't we just all work together and do it? It took me a long time to adjust to political realities and to learn what the system is like.
Her 1986 referendum campaign has echoes of Prop 2.5, but question 3 this year is a state tax cap, not a cut, but a break on the growth of state budgets. Her debating foil, Senator Dick Krause, has brought some props.
At the present time, Barbara's quite right. The amount of money that's going into that jar, if I can spill this all over the place, is above that line. Commonwealth is collecting and spending more money than is indicated by that line. And Barbara's telling us that we ought to go down to that line. The question is that a good idea? If this limit is put on at the state level, there is no way for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the local governments to meet the demands which are placed upon them.
Good. Thank you very much. Ms. Anderson?
Yes, Senator, you don't mind if I use your visuals here, do you?
Oh, right.
Okay, I mean, since this is just so neat, I can't resist doing it. Now, what the state likes to do is take some of your money for taxes, and they do that, and they take a little bit here. And then, of course, the economy is strong, and you're earning a lot of green stuff. Green stuff, that's great, Senator. So now they get to take a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. I hope this jar is big enough, because if it isn't, we are going to go right over onto the tablecloth. Ah, it's all gone. That's what they would do if they could, ladies and gentlemen. And all we are saying is let's put a limit on how much they can take. Never mind whether it goes into the local jar or the state jar. It is all our money, and it is all our government.
She's very willing to play in the rough and tumble of politics. She's frequently criticized and is just as frequently willing to criticize the opposition.
It is tough to debate, Barbara, because it's an ever-changing target. Everybody's motives are impure except hers. And I don't know where she gets that moral, holier-than-thou, more righteous attitude.
I don't know whether that's a lie. She may not simply understand what she's saying.
I would seriously suggest, Senator, that if we're going to debate throughout this campaign, and I think we are, that you not even imply or suggest that I am at any point lying unless you have your data right behind you on the blackboard.
All encounters with Barbara are much the same. She uses all the classic tools of the demagogue, the unproven allegation, the emotional, prejudicial appeal, the ad hominem attack. All complicated problems have simple solutions, and they're usually wrong. And she is the person who doesn't care whether they're right or wrong.
But they always use this scare tactic. It is bizarre. It is not going to happen. They will threaten it, but it will
There's a
not
lot of people who feel that there's not enough control over where their taxes are going. In a vacuum of leadership, with nobody in high public office talking enough or effectively enough about that, she shines as a star.
She's a sophisticated communicator, in much the same way that perhaps President Reagan is.
He can simplify an issue and communicate an issue very well. And she does that. She can simplify and communicate it very well. He seems not to be concerned about the complexities, and I think she's not.
She doesn't know what she's talking about in terms of specifics. She does know what she's talking about politically in terms of appeal to people's visceral concerns and needs. And in that way, she's a good politician.
Barbara likes the public and likes the power. Barbara is on the issue.
Thank you. It was fun. You grow on it. You know, you have a momentary, you rest, and then you just get really up for it, and you just keep going and going, and you just get more and more energy. Like exercising. It's like exercise. The more you exercise, the more up to it you are. So by November, I'll be ready to take on the whole world at once.
She likes to get out in the public limelight to make her point and to make sure that nobody obscures her from public view.
I can see myself.
Barbara has a strategy and a set of tactics that pretty much get her the attention that she wants and needs, and so she continues to proceed in that fashion.
I'm sorry. WCVB has asked...
I find Barbara to be rather unsure of herself, always wondering how she's perceived. Not at all the self-confident, determined, activist leader that she projects through the media to the public.
People are always saying, okay, well, Barbara's saying this, but what does she really want?
In one phrase, as Ronald Reagan's pitch was to get government off your back, Barbara Anderson's demand is, leave me alone. Her favorite Emerson essay, Self-Reliance, defines the role that she plays on the political stage and at home. She's an independent woman who has pictured herself since childhood fending off manipulation at every level. As a schoolgirl, she never wanted anybody dictating how to look or how to act.
If I want to wear the blue skirt, I'll wear the blue skirt. Why are you telling me I have to wear something else? Why do I have to sit still in school if I want to get up and move around? Why do I have to go to church? Or why do I have to read this book? I just have never liked anyone telling me, and I don't like the idea that anyone knows better than I do what's best for me.
What a waste to have a taste of things that can't be mine. Where is it written what it is I'm meant to be?
Barbara Anderson grew up in St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, a small coal town between Erie and Pittsburgh. Did you feel part of your town, or did you feel some distance, some alienation? Were you dying to get away?
I've never felt part of anything, Chris. No, I definitely didn't feel comfortable. Because I was always asking questions, you know, about the religion, which was 80% Catholic at the time in the town. And I wanted to see things and go places. And I used to tell everybody when I grew up, I'm going to travel and see the world. And they said, no, you'll talk about it, but when you grow up, you'll be like everybody else. I was in Catholic school. And we used to have these little, what she called the post office, and each of us had an envelope, and the nun would put messages to us, private messages, about ourselves, trying to develop us, I suppose, or criticism. Instead of bringing it out in class, she would tell us privately what our flaws were. And I was always hearing through grade school, because all the nuns had their little post offices, that I was a natural leader, and that I should always be very careful to lead for good and not for evil. And this was a tremendous burden on an 8-year-old kid. I mean, when you're growing up with hell, you know, and people who could be damned forever. And I was going to lead, and possibly if I led the wrong way, not really knowing what I was doing at age 8, that people could be burning forever throughout eternity because of me. I just didn't want the responsibility. I didn't want to be a leader. And I've always resisted it. If you're looking for root causes of things, I just don't want to go into the office and have a little note taped to my wall saying, I'm a leader, Barbara, go out there and don't make any mistakes because the whole world is depending upon you. I would rather everyone participates in the decision-making so that it isn't all my mistake if something goes wrong.
I'm going to do it. I just need him to know. I'm not going to be there for cocktails at 6:15.
All right.
I will be there, I hope, for dinner at 7 because I haven't eaten all day.
I don't know anyone who's had a Catholic education that didn't carry it all through their lives. And looking back on it, it was very valuable. I wouldn't have missed it. I wouldn't have subjected my own child to it. But it was really good because it built up this sense in me that grown-ups don't know what they're talking about, that they will tell you all kinds of bizarre stories in order to manipulate your behavior.
Authority, as she observed it, was a license to scare people. At the same time nuns were talking hellfire, politicians in the 1950s were selling fallout shelters, anticipating nuclear war.
So between the nuns manipulating us and the politicians manipulating us using a nuclear war threat, I believed by the time I was 11 or 12 that I would never see 18. I mean, I was going to die, and then I was going to hell, of course. And then this didn't happen. I mean, the nuclear war never came. I'm 43 years old. It hasn't happened yet. And I no longer believe anything any adult, which is defined as anyone older than I am, tells me, ever. Because they all lied, they all exaggerated, they distorted. They did it to make us sit still in school and not chew gum.
Twice married, twice amicably divorced, she has one son now at the University of Massachusetts.
I was a terrible early mother because it was just unbearable for me. There's this sense of responsibility. And we lived in California when Lance was 3, and we lived in an apartment with a swimming pool. So he'll never let me forget this. This little kid riding around on his tricycle with a political bumper sticker on, if I remember. Somebody was running for the Senate out there. And then he was wearing a Sears life jacket. You could get these little rubber life jackets that zipped up the back. It was like a vest. And he would wear that just in case he rode his tricycle into the swimming pool. And then he had this little helmet in case we had an earthquake and a building fell on him.
That doesn't sound like a rebellion against responsibility. You certainly weren't shedding it.
Oh, well, exactly. And that's why I don't want people to give me responsibility. I take it very seriously. And it just destroys my whole life, being responsible, because I do it. So that's why I don't want it. And people who can just shrug it off don't mind having it, I suppose.
We'll be in touch with you as we go along. If anything should happen so that you can stop, we'll let you know. Because we certainly aren't going to let you out there when there's no need to do it.
There is consistency here. She's uncomfortable with dependency, with taking orders or giving them.
I have never liked the idea of anybody being able to tell me what to do. And that's probably what the whole tax revolt's about, as far as I'm concerned, which is this early childhood defiance, which a lot of us feel, which is, don't tell me what to do. Who do you think you are?
Barbara Anderson was a conquered intellectual, a Thoreau and an Emerson buff, long before she got to New England. Especially Thoreau, the poet of Walden solitude, who aspired to be a good neighbor and a bad subject. Thoreau was a tax protester himself, though his was a statement against slavery and the U.S. invasion of Mexico in the 1840s. For Barbara Anderson, tax protest is its own reward. And for our society of hardy consumers in the 1980s, she recalled just one anti-political side of Thoreau, the man who saw little virtue in the actions of the masses of men, the Thoreau who wrote that one man more right than his neighbor constitutes a majority of one.
I just keep in touch with what's truly essential, simplify things as much as I can. I've never found anybody that I think was more right than Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau wasn't trying to be a leader either, and he wasn't into leaders. He just followed his own drummer and really approved of people who do. He would tell everyone to follow his own drummer wherever it was going.
But would Thoreau have voted for Prop 2.5?
Oh, absolutely. Sure he would have. I mean, what would he have voted for? Bigger government? More money being taken from taxpayers? Property taxes going up? Could he have paid 4.5% of the value of his little cottage there at the edge of Walden Pond? Of course he couldn't have. And he wouldn't have thought he should. And he wouldn't have approved of some of the things taxes are going for, and he wouldn't have approved of the government intrusion. If I weren't sure he had been, I wouldn't have done it, Chris. I mean, obviously, I think a lot about what he would think of Massachusetts if he were here now.
People are going to try to do things for themselves a little bit more and aim toward a little bit more self-reliance and freedom, I think, back the way it was in the beginning of the country.
In the end, Beacon Hill is the stage where Barbara Anderson plays out her homegrown defiance. She's bearing down in this case on the State House, where the legislature's tax authorities are tailoring a looser tax cap as a way around her own Question 3.
First floor. I'm doing a documentary on my life.
Oh, wonderful.
It's your certainly willing to stand here. Now, she said $3,800 last year as a part of her last tax package, and we want that $3,800. And I want to know why we can't have it and why she's increasing a tax when they've got a surplus. I simply can't imagine, particularly a tax that isn't going to do the business climate here any good at all. Just as they're starting to have problems in the high-tech industry and she's going to increase the tax on them, I mean, is this sensible tax policy? And besides, why isn't the tax...
I heard about her first when she had taken over the Citizens for Limited Taxation, and all the boys in the State House were very patronizing. Talked about this nutcake of a woman that used to be the secretary. She is very, very effective about mounting campaigns in the public arena, in the press, that force those men up in the State House to pay attention to her and to pay attention to the people for whom she speaks. None of the men up there quite know how to handle her, and they just mutter and moan. They haven't figured out how to deal with her at all.
Hi, Howard. I was at the State House. McGovern's thing is over, and I've seen the package. It's what I said it was. She's not calling it a tax increase. She's calling it a reduction in the rate. But Volk is having a press availability at 3:30. It would be helpful if you can grab a cab and come up here. I am wiped out from this debate.
It is a scream to see them up in the State House. She walks up, she heads for the press, and they scramble to get behind her.
Got a reaction?
Well, we're passionately opposed to the Senate version. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Yeah. And we have, well, the motive behind it is very suspicious at this point, coming from the Senate. I mean, Senator McGovern has said many times she does not like a surtax repeal. And to actually want to make it retroactive seems to indicate that what she doesn't like is question 3 on the ballot.
Those bozos in the high-tech council are about 80 yards behind her. They can't even keep up with her.
Barbara Anderson's political partner is Howard Foley, head of the Massachusetts High-Tech Council. They pool intelligence and they map strategies in her battle station across the Common from the State House.
And all the people who were out there saying that 2.5 would be the end of the world are out there saying question 3 would be the end of the world. And the League of Women Voters was there, obviously not knowing what it was talking about. So Bob Schaefer had to quickly step in every time that the League was asked a question because...
This alliance with high-tech has seemed odd for a populist and latter-day transcendentalist, as if Thoreau had married Main Street to sell Prop 2.5.
CLT wasn't a populist organization of citizens. It was a business-inspired group which had a goal, which was a legitimate goal. Improve the business climate by reducing the tax burden on business.
The biggest benefits of all were reaped by the utility companies, whose property had tremendous reductions in their assessments. Most small taxpayers ended up with very little distance.
The fact that we as a business organization have allied with her on a number of these issues is strictly a function of our congruence on the issues.
She is performing a valuable service that ultimately benefits industry.
And that's one of the things that people raise as an intellectual concern with Barbara, that she's not able to respond. Why, at every occasion, does what she's pushing for seem to result in the greatest gains going to those who already have the most?
I am very proud to be aligned with the people who are the industrialists, the entrepreneurs, the ones who keep the economy moving. I mean, no high technology community, no big business, no jobs, no services, no money, no anything.
With her foot soldiers and high-tech's treasury, Barbara Anderson and her private army hold strategic ground against the elected establishment.
Barbara Anderson will not be working alone. 5 years ago, the Citizens for Limited Taxation led a modern tax revolt in this Commonwealth. Their courage and dedication prove that you can beat City Hall and even the state legislature.
Speaker, why don't we just eliminate all the taxes and go home? And then we'll let CLT run the state, and, which may be an interesting situation.
By putting the question on the ballot, proponents always define the terms of debate, and the opponents are forced to play damage control and defensive politics.
Shadow government in this case means legislation by referendum. Some see Barbara Anderson as a sort of shadow governor.
Because the one thing about a shadow government is not responsible to anyone.
She has certainly set constraints, broad limits, as to the field in which anybody in policy-making positions can operate because of the threat of the ballot question.
There could be some problems in taking a lot of issues, too many issues to the ballot, which may let the legislature off from dealing with difficult issues and start to defer and delegate to referendum government.
If we didn't have an initiative petition process in Massachusetts, then we would not have stopped the spiral upward of property taxes, and we would not have brought the tax burden down to the national average. We couldn't have done anything. We would still be helpless and out of control. If you don't have the ability to go directly to the people and let the people make their own laws and put a stop to some of these things, then there's nothing you can do.
She's not speaking as an individual. She is expressing what a lot of people feel.
She can do it well because she's singing a song that everybody would like to hear, and that's saving tax dollars.
Barbara Anderson, Citizens for Limited Taxation.
She is a political personality, as important as the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and the Governor of the Commonwealth.
13 months ago, I think it was just 13 months ago, the Governor of the Commonwealth said that if the legislature, in its lack of wisdom, repealed the surtax, he would veto that repeal. And we think it is wonderful. It's even heartwarming, Mr. Chairman, to see the Governor of the Commonwealth now come out and demand that the legislature reverse its 2-year phase-out and insist on itself on immediate repeal. And speaking of respect, Mr. Senate Chairman, as you mentioned earlier, you have to respect somebody who will come out publicly the way the Governor has and admit that he was so wrong.
Governor Dukakis, for all the times he's been bruised in combat with Barbara Anderson, refuses to recognize his shadow.
I don't sense that the CLT presence is a particularly dominating one, though they're active and they work hard at what they do.
She had the chance to run this year. Clearly, she could have run for governor on the Republican ticket.
When you run for office, it's more risky than what Barbara's doing.
Even if it might be a psychological problem with me, I think I'm right. And that we have to move away from our dependence upon leaders and heroes and people who supposedly are experts know more than we do about how our lives should be run.
I'm not sure she wants the baggage that goes along with holding office. Then you have to make decisions and start to be a little less direct and come up with a little less simple answers.
I think I'm on the right track. I don't think there should be leaders. I think we should all be our own leaders. So how'd you vote on 1 and 2?
I voted no on 1 through 3.
That was an easy decision for you. Did you have to write down a little piece of the paper like everybody else?
It's always a pleasure being around you, Barbara.
I know.
You always attract the crowd.
Would you like the flyer on question 3? If we lose, tomorrow night I'm going to the Celtics game. We've got about 6 hours before I have to worry about that.
Hi. How you doing? Okay. Come to a party?
I don't have much time for sports, and I don't have time for travel, so I do politics. And the next thing I do, I've given some thought to serious bird watching and astronomy, and I would like to learn to do that cruel work. The mood swing here varies, yes. I've decided I either want to win this, or I want to win it, or I want to lose it big. I don't want any little piddling defeat here. I've had a feeling that I'm getting a little restless. But this is fun. You know, I won't ever walk away from anything. I never have. It's a matter of if the door opens, you walk through it. You don't go around opening doors. How am I allowed to feel now? You really think we won?
On question 3.
Yeah. Did we win? Yeah.